to the Guillotine MMA Podcast. I'm your host, Victor, along with co host Brandon Cruz. Um, I say welcome back because it's actually a continuation. We used to do the Guillotine MMA Podcast in 2016 and 17, then took a little bit of a break, but we're bringing it back and jumping right into it. So thanks for watching. Hopefully you've seen some of our episodes in the past. Like I said, it's been a few years, but we're hoping to bring this back on a regular basis. And this is our official episode back. So say hello, Brandon. Tell everyone welcome back.
What's up, guys? Sorry for a long layoff. Things happen. I graduated high school, so starting college life. You know, him with kids, me included. Life happens. Then coronavirus happened, and but you know what? All that matters is the present, and we're here now. We're gonna be hopefully getting back into the swing of things. I've started a YouTube channel and another podcast, so I've kind of been on top of that. So I'm pretty sure we have way more experience than we did before and understanding how stuff works. So I figured since we just watched the main card of the previous fight night from last night, I figured we just start on that and work our way backwards since it's the fresh thing on the mind, so we don't I think since the pay-per-view was probably more memorable than this one, but that's just because it's a big fight.
We'll go over both the fight night and the pay-per-view. And then so real quick before we jump into it, just obviously before it was a podcast. Now our technological abilities have gotten better, so I think this time around we'll do not only a podcast on the audio, but we'll also do obviously a video version of the podcast on the YouTube channel. So definitely keep an eye out. I mean, obviously, however it's most easiest, whether it's on the podcast channels or whether it's video, feel free to check it out. Leave your comments. Would love to hear what you guys think. So let's jump right into it. Do you want to do the fight night, or do you want to do the
let's just do the fight night. So I'll go ahead and throw it up on the screen for you guys. So we just finished watching the main card. We didn't really check out the prelims, but I'll go ahead and we'll go through the results of the prelims real fast. So first fight in the prelims, you have a welterweight fight with Semmelsberger and Jason Witt. Ended it in a knockout round one by Semmelsberger. I don't know how to say his name. Second fight, we got a women's draw fight. Went to decision between Frey and Paula. Frey ended up getting the decision nod. Next one is a flyweight bout. This one featured Courtney Casey and JJ Aldrich, who was a contestant on the Ultimate Fighter, which they had the strawweight contender. Well, no, for the flyweight championship. You remember that one where the champion won and never defended the belt? Remember that?
Right. Yeah, I remember that one.
So so Aldrich ends up getting the decision win on that one. Good for her.
And we'll go back and watch these because again, if you guys have heard us before, I love women's MMA. So the fact that there was 3 fights on this card on the prelims alone. So I definitely want to go check those out again. Or not again, we didn't get a chance to see those just yet. But we'll go back and see it because I think there's some good women's fights in there.
Right. Next one's a lightweight bout with excuse me for butchering these names, but some of them are a little complicated. So we got Nasrat Hakiparest versus Rafa Garcia. Nasrat ended up getting the decision nod. Next one's a bantamweight bout between Hani Yaya and Ray Rodriguez.
No, I think it's actually Rani Yaya. Remember?
No, I thought he's Brazilian, so it's Hani.
Right. But I think we've seen enough of his fights. Remember, he fought Coach Mark. Coach
Matt Lopez.
Lopez. So I think it is Rani Yaya. I think that one's a weird one where it's not.
It's not like normal Brazilians, right? Yeah. So he ends up getting the submission in round 2 over Rodriguez. Next one is a featherweight bout. Charles Jourdain versus Marcelo Rojo. Jourdain gets the TKO win in round 3, and then final fight on the prelims is a women's strawweight bout with Angela Hill getting the decision win over Ashley Yoder.
Yeah, that's the one I want to see because Angela Hill for me is kind of like up and down. She's kind of like the female version of Bruce Leroy. where they're kind of like
Yeah.
they win one, or they lose one. They win one, they lose one. But I think, Angela Hill might be, at a point in her career where she'll be, hopefully stringing together a few wins. So curious to see that fight. We'll go see that after the show today. But yeah, let's go into the main
Right,
card.
right. So main card, first fight. You missed this one, but I saw this one. Ended in a no contest. I'll explain why. So we have Eric Anders and Darren Stewart in the middleweight division. Basically, this is round one. Anders is just kind of lighting up Stewart. Stewart's in a down position with his left side against the cage. And so he has, I forget if it was, I think it was one knee down, the other up. He had his left arm down, but he had his right arm protecting from incoming strikes against Anders. Anders throws an illegal knee on a down opponent. So they, ended up being ruled a no contest. Mark Ratner, one of the UFC officials, explained it was mainly because of two reasons. One, because it didn't seem intentional, and two, because the fight was so early on in the fight, it hadn't gone past the first round. They just gave it a no contest instead of a disqualification. So next fight, which is where we picked up together, it was a flyweight bout between Mano Cape and is it Matthias Niculo?
I think it's Manel I got it. DC was pronouncing it. I forget.
It's Cape.
Was it Cape?
I don't think it's Cape.
And the other one is what is it?
Matthias. Matthias?
Nicolau was really what they were calling him during the whole fight. But that one was a weird one because Nicolau won. I wasn't mad at the decision.
Split decision.
Right. The problem with his opponent was, like they were saying, the commentators, like he's got all of this promise, but he wasn't putting out enough volume. In the second round, he basically demolished the guy in terms of control. So that could have been a 10-8 round. I wouldn't have been mad at it, right? Because he had so much control in terms of output and things like that. But then the other two rounds, he didn't do much. And so you could see in round two, it's kind of like, this reminds me, remember we talked about Holly Holmes, those times where she would fight and every now and then she'd give you a glimpse of what her capabilities are. You're like, man, if she would do that more often, she'd be dominating. The same thing with him, in that he that second round he dominated, but then that was it. He didn't do anything in the first round. He didn't do much the second round. So I don't know why he was mad at the end of the round, at the end of the fight.
I kind of disagree. So I thought he obviously lost the first round. Just the takedown got to him and ended up giving that round to the other guy. I thought the second and third round, second round, obviously that one was more his round. Third round, especially with the significant damage at the end in the last minute, I thought that was enough to give him the round. Was he throwing a lot less than he should have? Probably, but I still thought it was just enough. I mean, in a split decision like that, you can't be mad over who gets who. So I don't think it's a robbery, but I did think he got the nod on it. But obviously the judges saw something different. Okay. So next one, we got a bantamweight bout between Jonathan Martinez and Davy Grant. Davy Grant gets a second round knockout. It was a pretty entertaining bout. It looked like Martin was he came out pretty strong in the first round, but Grant was hanging in there. Pretty close first round. Second round.
During the whole thing, Grant was basically the aggressor.
Yeah.
And the one thing Grant Martinez had going for him was whenever Grant would switch to southpaw, he would throw a leg kick.
He was getting the calf kicks.
Right, the calf kicks. But beyond that, Martinez didn't do enough. It was another one where the volume of Grant just basically, was the whole fight, and then he found an opportunity, and the announcers were calling it because that's how he won his last fight. He got in there and landed a shot and put the guy out, and same thing that happened in this fight.
Yep. Next one, featherweight bout. Dan Ige gets the first
fight. I think this is the best fight of the card.
Quickest fight of the night too. So Dan Ige gets the one punch knockout in 22 seconds against Gavin Tucker. Literally,
it wasn't really 22 seconds.
It really wasn't 22 seconds. It was more of about 4 or 5 according to DC.
Right, because what happened was, remember, they start out on the opposite ends of the cage. So
Mhm.
when the referee says go, they waste maybe 10 seconds getting in
Yeah, they
there.
got to work their
But
way in.
so right when they engaged, it was 5 seconds before the fight was out. It was basically a straight right hand, and that put Gavin Tucker out
Yep.
like completely.
Yeah, no,
So
like it was a walk-off knockout. Pretty
yeah, so that one was a pretty sick fight. It was just one punch knockout. That was it.
uh-huh.
Nothing
Uh,
else. And then, even though that was great, the next fight was also pretty good in how it
mhm.
finished.
Right.
So this one was Misha Serkinov versus Ryan Spann, and Spann won with a knockout in the first round. A minute and 11 seconds in. This one was another interesting one because they were going back and forth, and Serkinov was holding his own. I mean, it was pretty even. And then with the exchanges, he just got caught by Spann. Now he got caught, got
The
put down.
straight right.
Right. The smart thing by Spann, though, is his corner was telling him not to go down to the ground and let him back up because
Mhm.
they knew he was hurt. And his last fight, I think, against Johnny
Walker, I think, yeah.
against Walker, he made the mistake of putting him down and went down, and it didn't go according to plan. So he
Mhm.
learned from his previous experience. He let Serkinov up, and then basically put him out again. So
Yeah.
another great one.
Yeah, good fight there. And now onto the main event of the evening. You had Leon Edwards returning after I think it was 2 years off. Hadn't fought since his win over Rafael dos Anjos. He
Well,
was
he has
fighting.
fought. He has fought because he got
Oh
he
yeah,
fought. If you want to call the Masvidal
the 30-piece with
face
the
off.
soda.
Yeah, that was kind of a fight where that was explain that one because not everyone will remember that one. Basically, Masvidal was in an interview, and then what happened?
So yeah, so 2 years ago, um, they had a fight night in Manchester. Leon Edwards was the co-main event. I'm pretty sure that was against Dos Anjos, but I'm not sure. He wins his fight. Masvidal was in the main event, knocks out Darren Till in the second round. Jorge's backstage doing his little interview with
I don't remember her name.
what's her face.
That's okay.
And Leon's walking past. He says something about July, instigating kind of like, "Hey, let's fight in July" or something. He's just talking shit to him, and then he just proceeds to say some stuff. Masvidal, that's the type of dude you don't come and talk shit to like that. He's like, "Come say it to my face." Puts his hands behind his back, goes to walk over to him, and then delivers the iconic 3-piece with the soda. It was more like a 5-piece. He hit him clean with 5 hits, and the security had to get in there, break him up or whatever. Yeah. And
so that to me is Leon's last fight. Besides this one,
same 2 fights in one night.
Yeah, but this one started. I mean, it looked like Leon was in control. He was the aggressor, which the commentators were saying Bilal usually is the one who's pushing the action in terms of moving in. He wasn't so much. He was trying to, it's the first round. It was the first round. They were trying to feel each other out. But obviously, Leon Edwards had more, more output. And so there was an incidental eye poke in the first round, but nothing out of it. Nothing came out of it. There was also a kind of a slight low blow. Remember, Bilal hit Leon Edwards, and he just kind of fixed his cup, and they kept fighting. Yep. And then in the second round, and it was early in the second round, 18 seconds in, basically Leon Edwards went for a left body kick. And Bilal moved in as he was, receiving the kick. And as he was moving in, Leon put his hands out and basically eye poked him. But it's probably one of the worst eye pokes I've ever seen.
So it was basically he was gonna set up the kick he was pretending to throw the left. He left his hand out, and as he's throwing the kick and as Bilal's moving in, he had his hands out. That's that's a problem with that's consistent like the John Jones problem. John Jones has done that shit for years. Right. Yeah, so they ended it in a no contest. No guy wins, no guy loses.
But it was a bad one. It was a bad one because he dropped to the ground immediately and
cried.
As he was crying because of the. I mean, honestly, it was one of the worst ones because his eye swelled up real quick. It started bleeding, ultimately, we weren't sure where he was bleeding from, but it was from the eyelid. So that's a good thing that it wasn't actually the eye. But the
Hmm.
biggest thing, and I think the reason that scared him and he was crying about it, he got so emotional, is because as soon as the doctor came over and asked him if he could see, he said, I can't see anything. So, I mean, picture yourself in that situation. You got an eye poke, you're not sure where it landed, but you know you can't see.
Hmm.
And just, I mean, I think the fear of losing eyesight will get to anyone. So
Yeah.
they called it off, and I think obviously they should have. He couldn't continue, but it was unintentional. It was kind of one of those things where it was the perfect storm where Bilal stepped in as he was, Leon was kicking him. So not much you can do there, but it was one of the worst ones. I mean, right on the eyelid, it wasn't a good one. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it ended. The great thing about the UFC that I love, though, think about it. If this was boxing, people would be so angry because the main event was,
Bad.
nothing basically. But the UFC is so great that what I like about it is you can watch the card and something like this happens, it's not a big deal because you had two fights, the Span one and the Ige one, and you're like, that made it a great night. It was a great card. And then I'm sure, like I said, some of those women's fights are, I'm sure, were good ones, which we'll go and check out after the show. So what I like is that you can watch the show, something happens like this, and you're like, all right, well, no big deal. Let's
Right.
wait for the next show.
Right. And just something I kept seeing a lot on Twitter last night, especially, is a lot of people were talking about. I mean, this has always been a big issue in the UFC, especially with the way their gloves are specifically made. So I saw a lot of people talking about possibly, what can we do to combat this and fix this issue so it doesn't happen. A lot of people were using the example of the Pride gloves. So I'll pull up a picture of it so you guys can see. But basically, what the Pride gloves were, I'll show you guys first. Images. So as you can see, they basically covered, so it was kind of harder to stick your to have a straight hand out. So if you look it out, it curves the hand automatically, and that way it kind of reduces eye pokes. Just, it's harder. I guess obviously it would be harder to poke a guy like this versus straight fingers out. I wouldn't be opposed to, I think it's. A lot of people have complained saying, oh, it might hinder grappling, because the fingers are tied up. Not necessarily. If you look at the Pride fights, grappling wasn't that necessarily, it didn't make that much of a difference, I don't think. And if you look, just looking at the design, it doesn't really hinder. The only thing I could say is maybe it adds a little bit more protection to the fingers. I mean, obviously, but but you're not hitting guys with straight on fingers. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't know. I think it's one of those things where you got to have your fingers out because you need them for grappling and stuff like that. And so that's a tough one. I mean, if you make gloves that are curved, I think it'll take a lot of people a little bit of adjusting. It'll help with the punches because, I mean, honestly, it'll get you. You're in that position to just close your hands,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how it might affect grappling. You know what I mean, or
Right.
what you're trying to do when you need to get a finger here or there. But I don't know. I mean, it's one of those things. I think the UFC's done a good job with the new rules where you can't keep your fingers out. So guys, I think the UFC gloves for to some degree are curved a little bit. It's just guys got to do a better job because a lot of them fight like this, and I
Mm-hmm.
know it's because you want to be able to touch and feel the hands of your opponent, but at the same time, that's how you get into those positions to do eye pokes.
Right.
So I'm not sure what you can do there unless
Well,
you have everybody fight with goggles on.
Uh,
you
well,
know,
okay, so yeah, so the UFC gloves, they're curved but only at the knuckle, so it doesn't really affect the fingers in that way. And the
right,
other thing is too, I think in the rules it's so hand out, palm out is okay, but as soon as you start to make it horizontal to where your fingers are directed toward them, that's when it becomes an issue. But yeah,
right.
yeah, I don't know. I think it's a good thing that it's not occurring every fight, so it's not
Yeah.
that consistent. But I think there definitely needs to be something because I've seen a good amount of bad eye pokes, and I mean, even though this was the worst one. But anyway, so now we're gonna go backwards in time to 2 weekends ago, to the UFC 259 card,
259.
Adesanya versus Blachowicz.
And so on that one, we didn't. I caught a little bit. I think the last fight
The prelims.
of the prelims.
Oh no, the early prelims.
The early
Yeah,
prelims,
yeah, yeah.
because I caught the Tim Elliott Jordan Espinoza
Same.
fight.
I was
But
watching
just to
on the
give you guys
freeway.
the results of the previous one. So, in the first fight, it was a bantamweight bout: Mario Batista versus Trevin Jones, and Trevin Jones got the win in the second round. With a knockout. Um, we didn't see these fights.
Mm-hmm.
Alan Cruz versus Euros Medic. That Medic got the win in the first round, knockout, for minute 40 in.
Dude made us look bad.
Um, and then Amanda Lemus versus Lavinia Souza. Lemus got the win in the first round, 339 into it, with a knockout. Sean Brady versus Jake Matthews. Sean Brady won in the third round with a submission. And then Kenneth Zachukwu. Man, I don't know if I butchered his name there, but oh no, Kennedy Zachukwu versus Carlos Olberg. Kennedy won in the second round, knockout. And then the Tim Elliott versus Jordan Espinoza. Now, we've been Tim Elliott fans since he won the Ultimate Fighter. He hasn't really, he's had up and down kind of career since then. But this was a good win. It was a unanimous decision. I saw most of it. He just had a lot of control. I mean, it was pretty much where he controlled the whole fight. And then there was actually an interesting exchange here when Tim Elliott was on the ground on top of Jordan Espinoza. And I guess he said something on the microphone that wasn't supposed to peak. Well, he said something to Jordan Espinoza that wasn't supposed to be picked up by the microphone, but it was related to, I guess, some rumors about domestic violence, right, Brandon?
Yeah, so he's like, I heard you like he's like, you like beating on women or some shit. He's like, you don't know the story.
Yeah, so they're basically talking, Tim Elliott talking junk, and Espinoza responding back, and it was interesting because it's one of those things where you don't usually pick that up in a normal UFC event because it's too loud, but because the coronavirus and everything is kind of quiet, the microphones pick up everything. But anyways, Tim Elliott won, unanimous decision. I think it was a good win. Tim Elliott's not getting any younger, so I think for him, he's got to string together some wins here because he gave Mighty Mouse, a run for his money.
Probably the hardest fight other than his split decision loss to Cejudo. I mean,
right.
He had him in submissions. I mean, I don't think we saw Mighty Mouse lose rounds up until that fight, and lost rounds.
But I think
that.
did we say who does Tim Elliott train with again? Is he's not a James Krause guy, right?
No, he is a James Krause guy. He just started working with James Krause.
So that's the thing. That's what we were talking about. So James Krause, as a fighter, I think he's way better as a coach. Don't get me wrong. I'm not dissing him as a fighter, but man, the quality of guys and, well, not only guys but women that he's coaching, it seems like he's the next wave. Every now and then you have kind of these trainers who, for a stretch of time, have success in the UFC. Because you remember Black Zillions, when we first started watching, they had success. Then American Top Team, and then
the guy with the glasses.
The guy with the glasses, Cejudo's guy. What was the camp out of Florida?
American Top Team.
And which is Uriah Faber's?
Alpha Male.
So again, I think James Krause is kind of the new wave of where the top fighters are going to get trained, because I think he's so intelligent and cerebral that he's able to train these athletes and take them to the next level. So Tim Elliott now with James Krause. So I'm curious to see what that means for him.
Yeah, I think him and definitely Trevor Whitman, the coach of Cody Garbrandt's with him now. The guy who just lost to
Wait, Trevor Whitman, is that the guy? That's not the guy that
Justin Gaethje's with. Yeah. No. No, you're talking about I love that guy. You're talking about
I don't remember his name.
Dwayne Ludwig. Dwayne Ludwig, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was just gonna make sure, because I'm like, wait a second.
Those three guys, that's like the upper echelon. But I mean, I haven't seen the last guy I just mentioned in a minute, ever since TJ left. But
yeah,
he is probably definitely one of my favorite corners, just because I love the way, I just love that guy's style. Okay, onto the go ahead. Onto the prelims.
So yeah, so in the prelims we had Rogerio Bontorin versus Kai Kara France, and Kai
Hmm.
Kara France won in the first round knockout. Um,
He was
and
losing this
so
fight. He was losing this fight at first.
right, he was losing this fight, so that was an interesting. He came back and actually won, but he was losing in the first round, so that was an
Yeah.
interesting fight. That was a
A,
good way to
a
start
little
the.
bit of confusion at the end of the fight. So Kai was getting dominated in the first couple minutes of that fight. Gets back up out of the clinch on the cage, and then just drops Rogerio. And I want to say it was Herb Dean or Mark Smith. They get
Oh
yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah.
They get France off him, and then France is celebrating, but then Rogerio kind of goes to get up, but then falls back down, and then Kai kind of just runs back in like he,
Well, because
you know what I mean?
I think Herb Dean was going to call it off, but he ran into Kai Kara France, so he didn't necessarily like give the
The wave
the
off.
fight's over sign, the wave off.
Yeah,
So I think France's corner was like, dude, we don't know if the fight's over, so get in there. And he went back. He was trying to get back in there, and then that's when they
yeah, it
called
was
it
a
off. But
little weird.
it was weird. But I think it was because of where Herb Dean was, and like I said, pulling France off,
Yeah.
he didn't have a chance to kind of wave it off. And then
Hmm.
after that, the fight I was looking for, because I was hoping he'd get a win out of it, was Joseph Benavidez versus Oscar Askarov. And
Hmm.
Askarov won unanimous decision. And honestly, just Joe hasn't looked the same way since he basically was in the title contention. Since he fought Cejudo. No, he didn't
No,
fight. I mean,
since he got
you know what
murdered
I mean,
2 times by
by
the
Mighty Mouse.
Figueredo. No, by Figueredo.
No, oh, by Figueiredo, that's right.
Yeah,
And
after
so,
he.
and honestly, before then, so that's why I'm not even considering those, because before then was really when he looked, you know, like he was in the title picture, and then after that, he just hasn't been the same.
Right.
I just think it's one of those things where either he's gotta kind of really think about his career, or maybe change it up and maybe a new trainer, because is he done? I don't know. It looks like it based on the last 3-4 fights,
Hmm.
but he's still got the will. So I think maybe giving it a change of pace, going somewhere else,
Right.
and maybe going to James Krause, that new wave,
Hmm.
or just go trade somewhere else to see if that change of pace could change things for him, or otherwise I think it is time to kind of call it a day.
Hmm.
So after that it was Kyler Phillips versus
Your
Yadong.
dong. Song your
I
dong.
don't. Unanimous decision by Kyler Phillips. I don't remember much of this fight, to be
I don't
honest.
remember at all.
Yeah, the next one was one I was looking forward to again. Was Dominic Cruz versus Casey Kenny, and
Hmm.
it was split decision, but Dominic Cruz won. Um, I thought it was a good fight. I mean, I was hoping for a dominating performance by Dominic Cruz. I don't think it was totally dominant.
Hmm.
But again, the problem with Dominic Cruz is he's had so many injuries that in the last 5 to 6 years, he hasn't fought too much. So to some extent, I still think there's something to be said about ring rust. And I know that Leon Edwards said, yesterday he doesn't believe in ring rust, but I believe in ring rust. And in any sport, if you're not out there competing live, yeah, you're a top athlete, but there's still something to be said about being in there live. So I think Dominic Cruz, another good um, fight under his belt. The last fight he should have won, to be honest.
Yeah.
Um, and so even though he's 1-1 in the last two fights, he's really in my book almost 2-0. Should be 2-0. So I think maybe another fight to kind of another fight soon to kind of get all that rust out, and he could be back in the in the title picture. So
Yeah, I mean, and most notably, this was his first 3 round fight in like 6 years. Guy's only been in either main events or championship fights, and he's only fought in like 4 times in the last 6 years, which is crazy. So that
yeah,
just
no,
goes.
and no pressure. I mean, it was on the prelims, which I was surprised because as soon as I saw the card, I'm like, Dominic Cruz isn't on
Mm-hmm.
in the main card. But I think it's kind of like putting some of those fights in the prelims takes the pressure off a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and just lets the guys go out there and fight. So, anyways, after that, it was Thiago Santos versus Alexander. Is it
Rocket, Rockets or
Rakic?
something. I think
Rakic?
Rockets.
Yeah, and Rakic won unanimous decision. Thiago Santos. I mean, I don't remember too much of this besides all his tattoos. But Thiago Santos just I don't know, didn't really, you
Yeah.
know,
Well,
didn't really
the fight
stand
was
out.
very lackluster. It was kind of boring. Both guys were kind of just fighting, not like themselves, not going for it. And I think that was even Dana White mentioned that, especially with how this is a light heavyweight bout, especially when you have the champions fighting in the same card, you want to
Right.
go out and you want to, do something big so you can get your name thrown in for the next title fight. Both these guys
Right.
under delivered, and Rockets, got the nod, just not by much, but he just did a little bit more. But yeah, pretty disappointing. I personally think Thiago Santos has some of the best hands in the division, but ever since he lost to John Jones, he just hasn't been the same.
Right.
And he
Right.
gave John Jones a run for his money,
Yeah.
which very
Yeah. So
disappointing.
when you give John Jones a run for his money, you expect to come out and dominate
Hmm.
against other guys, and when you don't, then that's what kind of screws you.
Yeah,
So after that, we had Islam
Makachev.
Makachev versus Drew Dober, and it was Islam won in the third round via submission. I'm trying to remember this fight. Do you remember this one?
Yeah, just Islam dominating on the ground, and then I think he got, I don't remember what kind of submission he got, but a lot of guys have been saying, kind of touting him to be the next Khabib, the training partners, but I think we need to slow down on the Islam hype train. I'm not trying to say he's not good, but I think there's no need to get him to rush him yet. Um, I think he I think he can be better than they can be, but I think he just still needs some time to develop and get, keep climbing up the ranks before we throw him into something crazy. Not
Right,
saying he couldn't handle it, but I think when you have a star in the making, it's best to, take the long way and develop him and get some hype behind him instead of, rushing him into something crazy.
right, right. And then after that, it was the I guess the controversial fight of the night. It was
Yeah.
of the year, I would say, of the last 2 years. It was Peter Yan versus Aljamain Sterling. And I gotta be honest, this fight was kind of going back and forth. I
Hmm.
thought Yan was winning.
Hmm.
Aljamain Sterling was holding his own, but still, I think Peter Yan was winning the fight. And then, why don't you tell him what happened?
Yeah, so first round comes out, Aljo is just pushing the pace hard. He's throwing a lot of volume, but he wasn't throwing. The problem was there wasn't much power behind anything, so it looked like he was just kind of like
Like
they
the
do in
difference was with that Peter Yan was
Peter
throwing with
Yan was
power.
throwing hard. So yeah, first round, you give it to Aljo, and then the second, third, that's when Peter Yan started to, kind of come on. You could see Aljo just getting tired. So, but it was a good back and forth fight. But you could tell Peter Yan is just had a different level over Aljamain. Then we get to the fourth round. Aljamain, you can just tell he's exhausted, and at some point he goes into a down position in the middle of the octagon. Peter's kind of standing there, and all of a sudden, boom, the most illegal knee, you could ever throw. It's just blatantly
Yeah, it
illegal
wasn't
as
even
hell.
questionable.
Yeah, clearly defenseless. Aljamain just drops, um, and then basically Doctor comes in. So Mark Smith, okay, so there's a lot to unfold in this. There's a lot of controversy between the decision, between the refs, between the commentators, announce teams. So basically, I'll try to tell the story in counting everything. So basically, Aljamain's in a down position. Jan is standing there. His coach, he has a couple different coaches. Some speak English and some speaking Russian. The coaches in English are saying, no, don't kick him, just throw punches, just punch him, right? One of his, so according to Khabib, Peter
Who was
asks,
nearby?
yeah, who's nearby, thank God, translating with DC because, they're boys. Peter says something along the lines of, should I kick him or knee him or something along those lines? And one of his cornermen in Russian basically says yes, and then so Jan delivers the blow. Following that, Aljo's down. He's, reacting like he would if he got kneed illegally. It was a hard hit for sure.
Yeah.
So Mark Smith's checking on him. He brings in the doctor. He whispers to the doctor, he basically says, he tells the doctor, I told him
he was a down.
I told him he was a downed opponent. And then he says, did he tell the doctor that if he can't continue, he wins a belt? I think I'm pretty sure he told him. Yeah, they think that's what there was a controversy. So he tells him if he can't continue, he wins the bout. And and it was, the problem was you had Aljo down right here, and you had the ref and the doctor right here. So Aljo's definitely able to hear all that. So the controversy comes in, did Aljo play it off a little bit so he could get the win and get the belt? Or was he, actually hurt? Now, at first, I definitely thought he was hurt.
I think he was hurt, and whether he wanted to move forward or not, I think the doctor wasn't going to let it happen, because, to be honest, like, even if the title wasn't on the line, if this was a non-title fight, the doctor wouldn't have let it, because it was so blatant when he hit him with the knee that his head rocked back. So that he wouldn't have let it continue.
I mean, so the hit was for sure. The hit was 100%. You can't fake that. And the other controversy was the hit intentional? Was Peter just confused? Peter in an interview made it sound like he's like, yeah, I was supposed to, I was already focused on the knee, and I just made a mistake, because when you're
that's a tough one. I think that's a tough one, because most fighters are thinking about the hands with a down opponent.
Yeah.
And so when the heat of the moment, you don't see his hands on the ground, but you forget that he's still a down opponent if he's on the ground on his knees. So I think you could get your wires crossed in the heat of the moment with the adrenaline. And if he's going to, if his coaches are telling him hit him, and some of them are really meaning kick him, and you're thinking, is he down for a knee? Your wires get crossed, and I could see it happening. It didn't seem like it was kind of like intentional, even though it was blatant illegal. I don't think it was intentional. Like, I don't think that was his intent. I think it just got crossed, because remember, without any fans, all those instructions coming from the corner are coming in all at once. So if your coaches are all screaming in different things, it can mess with your head. So in fairness to Peter Yan, I don't think he was, he was malicious in trying to do that. Aljamain, whether he wanted to continue or not, I think the right decision was to, not allow him to, because, he could, honestly, that could have been a concussion, because it hit him square, And so the controversy obviously is because through a disqualification, Aljamain wins the title. So obviously what you do now is you run it back, because even Aljamain doesn't want to win it that way. And
supposedly,
here's the thing. If he had wanted to, then I think his reactions afterwards would have been a real good acting job, because he just showed that he didn't want the belt that way.
Well, the other controversy is that there's pictures of him, partying with his families and friends, and he's out here posing with the belt. Now, he came on to say, oh, I was just doing that for my family and friends, but you looked a little too, I don't know. Personally, the instigator inside me was kind of just looking at.
I would have left the title at the hotel then.
Yeah, I would have told him. I would have told my parents, I'm not posing with this. I don't care.
Yeah.
So, but
as a matter of fact, I wouldn't even been carrying the belt. I would have given it to my coaches, be like, listen, you guys take it back with you.
Exactly.
Because I don't want it this way.
Especially,
and I don't want to be taking
with
pictures.
Yeah. But that fight will get run back. So see part 2.
Yeah. So that one was a good fight.
It was definitely entertaining.
I think Jan was winning the fight.
And
then after that, so here's the thing. The next one I thought was I was hoping when this got announced that Megan Anderson would step up and really show us her potential, because since she's been in the UFC, she hasn't really done much. She's kind of been underwhelming. And you're going up against questionably or unquestionably the best female MMA fighter in the last
ever.
Yeah, you would say ever, because she's been dominating, and not only dominating like Ronda Rousey used to dominate. She dominates to the point where she beats people at their own game. She beat Holly Holm with kicks, right, which is Holly Holm's thing. She beat Cyborg with strikes, which is Cyborg's thing. She beat what was Misha Tate.
Choked
What
her
was it?
out.
Submission?
Hmm.
Her own game. She beat Ronda Rousey, right? So she's not only been dominating, but dominating like in
Like murder.
superb fashion, right? Murdering people. So Megan Anderson, to me, hasn't had many memorable fights in the UFC. I don't know. Again, we didn't watch her before she came to the UFC. She had a great career, but I was hoping that this would be kind of like Holly Holm. Holly Holm versus Ronda Rousey. I was like, I like Holly Holm, but I think she's getting a title shot too soon, and she shocked the world. So that's what I was hoping.
Hmm.
It went not that way, not that
Yeah.
way at all. I mean, to the point where another demolishing performance by Amanda Nunes, where she basically steamrolled right over her
Hmm.
and got her into submission. And this ended 2 minutes into the first round with a submission,
Right.
where Megan Anderson just kind of tapped at the first sight of a submission. You know what I mean? It wasn't
Hmm.
even like, how some fighters, you're in the submission and you just hold on until the last very second that you possibly can. She didn't. She basically got put in the position, boom, tapped right away. So it was very underwhelming performance, and I think honestly she might be done in the UFC because this division has nobody,
Well,
you
that
know,
that fight was actually her last fight in the contract, from what I believe.
right? And
Um,
I think that's a good excuse for again, not that I love women's MMA, and I would love to see the featherweight division kind of built up, but unfortunately there just isn't enough women to do so. So I see this division kind of going away unless we have some kind of like dramatic, shift where you see some women coming in and really showing, higher level skill.
I think this
Um,
comes down to this is UFC's fault. Regardless
right,
of if there, I mean, the problem is right now there are no featherweights in the UFC. That doesn't mean that there's no featherweights in other divisions. Regardless of if they're good or not, at least get some people in the division so we can have people talking about the division. You know,
right.
so I think the UFC is definitely to blame. This division's been here for, I want to say, 4 years, and we've only had maybe 5 featherweight fights ever. Kind of
Yeah.
ridiculous. And that would suck for Amanda. She's cleaned out 2 divisions. And she has to lose one of her belts because the UFC can't provide her with anybody. I don't think that's
Right.
necessarily fair. The only other people, I've seen a lot of people talk about Kayla Harrison, who is competing in her second fight in second season of PFL. I think that one is still a couple years away. Kayla Harrison's still new to the game, and I don't think it would be beneficial for her to make such a dramatic jump so early in her career. I think she, especially because she's fighting at lightweight, which is 10 pounds over featherweight, even though she can make featherweight in her last fight she did. And also people are talking about Clarissa Shields, who is set to make her MMA debut in PFL also. But then again, that's even more light years away if, considering Kayla Harrison and other. But, plus, let's keep it real. Amanda is at the, her total prime. She just had a daughter, before she was talking about retiring, especially now if there's nobody left to fight her. She might as well just retire on top.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think at the other division, at the bantamweight, there's still some decent fighters, but the featherweight is just there's nobody there. But anyway, so that didn't go. That kind of went expected. Obviously, that
Yep.
fight. I was hoping Megan Anderson would show more. And then the title fight was John. Uh,
Jan
how do you pronounce
Blachowicz.
this? Blakovic, Blakovic,
Blachowicz.
Blakovic, Blakovic versus Israel Adesanya. And like I was saying before this fight, like I know Israel's stepping up. I think there's something to be said about a light heavyweight and their power versus his division. He held his own. I got to be honest. Blakovic won versus unanimous decision. I think that was the right call, but Adesanya really showed. I mean, he really showed. Could he go in there again and come out on top? Sure. It wasn't lopsided by any means. But I think Blakovic did win the fight. So
Well, what it really came down to was the last 2 rounds where Blachowicz got the 2 takedowns. That's really more or less what the fight came down to. Honestly, it was a close fight the first 3 rounds. I personally would have gave the nod to Israel Adesanya, but then afterwards, looking at the stats, Jan got the better of him, you know, with the significant strikes, which in watching the fight, it didn't really, I mean, maybe it's because I wanted Adesanya to win, but it didn't feel like the stats and then what I watched in the fight didn't add up, you know what I mean? Now, I thought even with the 2 takedowns at the end that Adesanya could have got the split decision nod, but that didn't happen. A controversy I saw a lot of people talking about, even some of the fighters, was they were talking about how biased the actual commentary team was during this fight. And you know what? I gotta be honest, they're totally true. You know, if you would have listened to just the commentary, you would have thought that Adesanya was totally winning until they just switched it up in the fourth and 5th round. You know, it was pretty. I don't believe that they were trying to be biased, you know, but obviously the star in this fight was Adesanya, you know, and so you kind of gotta lean on that to get people excited, you know, like. But at the same time, I do agree that it was totally lopsided the way they were talking about the fight. You would have totally thought Adesanya had this fight in the bag if you would have listened to that.
Right, and if you're not a smart enough person watching the fight, like I figured, I wasn't disappointed with the decision. I mean, I thought, you know, Blachowicz did enough to win, but yeah, Adesanya showed, you know, that he could handle his own at the light heavyweight. So yeah, it was a good card. I mean, it was definitely a good show and some great fights.
Pretty stacked.
It was a good one. Yeah.
And so last thing before we go, we're gonna go ahead and take a preview of the next couple cards, get a little pre-fight predictions and see what's going on. So following this weekend, we're gonna go on to next Saturday, the 20th. We got the fight night versus Derek Brunson versus Kevin Holland in the middleweight division. I'm gonna go ahead and give this nod to Kevin Holland. I just like the way he fights. I like his shit talking. I just think he's a fun guy to watch, and I think he's gonna make some big moves this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think it'll be an interesting fight.
Let's see, nothing really sticking out in the prelims or the other fights. We're gonna go ahead and go to 260, which is the big card in 2 weeks. So the main card so far, we have Sean O'Malley versus Thomas Almeida, a bantamweight fight. I'm hoping that Sean O'Malley gets the win over Thomas Almeida. I like the way he fights. You know, obviously he didn't do too good in his last fight when I think he pinched a nerve in his foot or something like that against Chito Vera. But I think he can, rebound, get a nice win here, and go back to getting on the hype train for himself.
Yeah. Wait. Which did you skip over 260?
This is 260.
Oh, that's what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah, this is the main card. No, I'm just reading off the main card.
Oh, on the main card. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, for me, there's a lot of good fights on this one. This is another stacked card. I mean, there's a lot of great fights and great fighters that I like to watch on this card. So I'm looking forward to it. In terms of making predictions, I mean, I don't know. I like to go into these, and unless it's someone that I really, really enjoy, I'm like, okay, well, I want to see a good fight. Mm-hmm. So for me, like, for example, obviously the main event, Stipe versus Ngannou. You got Volkanovski versus Ortega. Mm-hmm. You got Woodley versus Luque. You've got O'Malley, Almeida, like you were saying. So for me, those four fights alone are like unbelievable. And obviously Sean O'Malley's, the next hot thing, and I think he's playing it up pretty good. Sure, he had a loss recently, but I think that was a blip on the screen. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I'm picking O'Malley.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, go ahead.
Welterweight, you got Tyrone Woodley versus Vicente Luque. I think
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Woodley.
I'm not a fan of Woodley. Woodley's kind of gotten his ass kicked the last 3 fights. Broke a rib his last fight with Colby Covington. I think he just needs to. I think he's gonna be on his way out soon. I mean, obviously, would it be cool to see him come back and get a Nice little win. Yeah, I'm not a hater of him, but I never really liked his style. I thought he was a boring champion.
Right,
So
right.
did
That's the
Dana
worst thing.
White.
Don't be a boring champion. You
Yeah.
know, it's like your champion dominate.
Mm-hmm.
But and then of course, I mean, we're Ortega fans,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm a T City fan. Always have been. Because you remember that I think it was the first fight we saw from him was the most exciting fight that I've ever seen,
Mm-hmm.
where it looked like he was the one losing because of all the blood he had on him, but it was because he fought the whole fight on the ground, on the bottom,
Right.
and his opponent was bloody through the whole because he was bloody through the whole fight. So he was dripping blood on T City,
Mm-hmm.
but it was because T City's the only MMA. I think the only MMA fighter that I've ever seen that can win a fight and dominate from the bottom position.
Yep.
Do you remember that? And
Yeah,
so
and
ever
he's
since
got
then,
good jiu-jitsu.
we've been a T City fan.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm rooting for T City. I mean, last time he got a title shot, I think it was a little too early. I mean, he really got destroyed by Max Holloway, but Max Holloway's at a different level. I think now with that experience going up against Volkanovski, I think T City's is gonna come through. I think he's gonna win this one.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Volkanovski got some good striking, but I know Ortega showed some good striking against Korean Zombie his last fight, but to be devil's advocate, is Korean Zombie on the same level as Volkanovski or Max Holloway or all these other top tier strikers in this division? I don't know necessarily.
No, I don't think so. Would I have preferred Ortega to get another fight? Maybe who's ranked in the top 5 in that division?
Let's look it up. So
because if he lost to Max Holloway, I'd like to see him maybe against another title contender. You know. So what I'm
top 5, you have Max Holloway's number 1, Ortega number 2, Zabit at number 3, Yair at number 4, and then Korean Zombie at number 5.
Okay, so he basically, I wouldn't want to see him versus Yair because I think he'd win that.
I think Zabit would have been a good. I mean, that would have been a good challenge.
Yeah, but I think for Zabit, it's a little early as well.
You know
what I mean?
Yeah.
So really, you don't want to see you don't want to do Holloway versus Ortega again. Although,
you mean
would I?
Oh yeah.
Would I have liked to see that again? Just see whoever wins that gets a title shot. Maybe because for Ortega, yes. For Holloway, no. Holloway is already beating Ortega. But for Ortega, if he goes in there and beats Holloway, then now you should be going for the title.
Right.
So not really his fault. Do I think that he could use another high caliber fight like that before a title shot? Sure. But do I think he could beat Volkanovski?
Yep.
Yeah, that's possible.
It'll for sure be a close fight. I don't see Ortega, stopping him, but I think he could get I don't know, because even just like the way
I don't know, man. There's been some fights where we thought he was losing and he pulls out the win.
Pulls it off.
And so I think he could stop him, because there's been fights where like he's going to lose this fight, and next thing you know, in the last minute, he ends up with the win because of his jiu-jitsu. His jiu-jitsu is like out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem is he didn't get to use the jiu-jitsu against Max Holloway.
Yeah. I mean,
that was the problem.
And would that be a factor with Volkanovski? I don't know. Could he get him to the ground? I mean, I think so, but I think it's definitely going to be rough. Volkanovski's obviously the smaller guy, so we'll see how that goes. And then on to the main event, which is this is like a big fight, at least for me, because I am a huge fan of Stipe. He's definitely one of my favorite fighters to watch. And he's the GOAT of the heavyweight division. He's the greatest heavyweight of all time. There's no disputing that. And he's coming against Francis Ngannou again, who's just been on another tear and is looking even scarier than before he fought for the title. Now, we all know how the first fight went. Stipe just exposed him and exposed his game basically. And but I don't know. I could definitely see it being the same result, but at the same time, you just don't know with this kind of fight. I don't know.
Because the thing is with a lot of these guys, like when they get their title shots, they got to step up. Like remember when we talked about Yoel Romero and he went to the title, fight, and he just freaking didn't fight the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like he got scared and was more hesitant.
Yeah.
I like guys that he step up to the stage. So if Ngannou steps up to the stage, I could see him coming on top. And so this can go either way. It all really depends on Ngannou, because Stipe is going to come and fight the same way he's always fought. Like in terms of he steps up to the stage.
Yeah, he's
Now
ready.
This fight's going to really depend on Ngannou.
Mhm.
That's really it. So if he steps up to the challenge, this could be a really interesting fight.
Yeah.
So
yeah, couldn't have said it any better.
yeah. Well, listen, guys. So thanks for again listening, watching. Appreciate you guys. Spending the time with us on the return of the Guillotine MMA podcast with us. We'll try to do these a little bit more frequently now, and again, it's going to be on different platforms. Where you can watch the video or you can listen to the audio on a podcast. But appreciate you guys welcoming us back. We're happy to be back, and stay tuned for more.
Mm-hmm.